Now, it's not very often that I pick up a plugin and it fits in straight away with my workflow, but this one has, so much so that it's become one of my essential plugins. Now, I know the pain. Sometimes you sit down at your computer to come up with a track and there's just no ideas. Nothing comes to you. And that happens to me quite a bit. Every now and again, I'll have a bit of a spell where I can't think of any ideas. And usually I'll go through my sample collection or just listen to some other music to get some ideas. But I have found a plugin. I picked it up just before Christmas. And honestly, this one is amazing for sparking new ideas. This one's called Riffer by Audio Modern. And I think it's a brilliant little plugin. When I first saw the demo video for it, it was pretty much used for kind of trance-like ARPs. And I thought, well, maybe it doesn't apply to me, but I kind of looked at it a little bit longer. I thought, well, maybe I can actually use it for my type of music. So I picked it up on the demo and I thought I'll give it a go and see what I can come up with. And honestly, the features and everything in it just sparks so many ideas for me. And there's just so many different uses. And that's what I want to go through today. So let's jump in and have a look at this Riffer. Now, Riffer is actually a Midi generator plugin. If I drag and drop it onto a new Midi track, this is what's going to generate Midi notes for me. However, it's not going to make any noise itself. We need to actually route it into another instrument. Now, this is quite easy. All you need to do is add a new Midi track. Then find the instrument that you want. This can be obviously any instrument you want. So I'm going to pick the Tal Uno LX, one of my favorite plugins. Love this one. And let's go for a bass sound. I'm going to jump into the factory bank, choose this bass patch, might tweak it a bit later. So we now need to set it up so that all MIDI notes coming from Riffer go into the Tal. So I need to set it up within the MIDI settings of the Tal. So let's go to the all-ins here. I'm going to select Riffer. You can see the Riffer track is showing within here. And then from this drop down, I'm going to select Riffer. And then finally, I'm going to select in. This basically sets it up so that all MIDI notes coming from this MIDI channel here will go through the Tal and the Tal will play it. So let's jump back to Riffer. I'm going to open up Riffer. And at the moment, it's not going to play any notes whatsoever. So in the main part of Riffer here is this kind of note grid. You can see it on the left-hand side here, we have a piano roll, and then we have this grid of 16 blocks. And this is where all our notes are going to appear. Now, the biggest feature of Riffer is the fact that it generates these MIDI notes automatically, which is fantastic. All you need to do is hit this dice cube here, and it will generate those MIDI notes. So you can see there, it just generated those notes completely randomly. Well, not completely randomly, because they are actually within a certain scale. You've got the root notes going on the top here. So at the moment we're set to C, but we could easily move it to D, for example, or D sharp, for example. Let's actually set it to A. Let's go for A. Now, I can also set the scale in the top left-hand corner here. At the moment, it's in minor scale, but I can actually switch between all the different scales within here. So I could go for a major scale, for example. I'll stick with minor for now. So we're now in A minor, and what I can do is I can hit the dice icon here, and it will generate some more notes for me. Let's play it and see how it sounds. Sounds a little bit of a mess really at the moment, but don't worry, we're going to tweak that a little bit. So at the moment it's generated 16 notes, so basically a note on every one of those blocks. Now for a bass line, maybe you don't want that many notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reduce the amount of notes that it actually generates, and that can be done here. So you can see here we have it says 16 here. This is how many notes that it generates. So I'm going to change this to 8, for example. Let's change it to 8 and then click random again. It's playing a little bit too high, but unfortunately we have a very quick control to change that. You can see here we can actually go down by 12 semitones or down by 24 semitones, and we can also go up by 12 and up by 24. I want to make this a bit lower because obviously it's a bass, so I'm going to do it down by -12. So it's generating some notes for us, but it's also doing some other stuff as well. So it's generated those notes. We're actually on the pitch tab at the moment. That shows us what notes we got, but it also randomly selects the duration, the velocity and the density for every single note. So you probably know what duration and velocity is, obviously, but density is basically, certainly in this plugin, it's almost like a kind of a roll. It's almost like a beat repeat. So on every note where it's selected, you can see there's 5 repeats in here. It does that kind of stutter effect almost. Now for me, I don't like this so much. It might be useful for certain genres maybe, but for creating bass lines and stuff, I'm not that keen. So what you can do is I can actually reduce this all the way down. So they're all set to 1. So if a note hits, it only plays once basically. There's no kind of juttering, there's no beat repeat. Now if I click random again, it will randomly generate it. So how can I stop that happening? Basically I can set these all to 1 and then I can click the lock icon. This actually locks the density so it keeps it exactly what I've set it here. So if I hit random, nothing comes up. The same thing you can do with velocity as well. You've got all these different random velocities. Every time you hit the dice, it will randomly set the velocity of every single note. Then you can actually set that to be exactly the same if you want to. You can go in here and tweak every single one of them, or you can set them all like this. And if you want to lock it, again, you can hit the lock button here. And finally, we have the duration as well. So you can easily set it all to the same duration, exactly the same with velocity, and I can lock that out. So let's hear how that sounds. So we've got what's approaching kind of a bass line, but as you can hear, my beats are actually quite swung. They've got a bit of shuffle to them. Unfortunately, we actually have a shuffle control within Riffer, which actually, I love this. I love this control because you can actually dial in just how much shuffle that you want to. By default, it's got no shuffle at all, but what we're going to do is dial a little bit in. Let's try it down an octave as well. As you can see here, you can just keep playing around by switching all these different settings. I'm going to switch to maybe a different key as well. Let's go for a D, for example. I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely loving this plugin already. If you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below. Now we also have some more controls down the left hand side here. We got this root control, this root note, and this basically defines how many of the notes that are generated. So how many of the 8 are generated are actually on the root. So you can see here that it's got 4. So we can see 4 of these notes are actually on the root. Now we can actually make this more or less. So we could actually have 6 of the 8 are actually in the root. If I select that, then we got just 2 that aren't. And I can actually turn this off so we don't actually have that at all. For a bass line though, I think it works quite nicely actually having some of them set on the root. So I'm actually going to select 4 and probably keep it as that. Maybe let's change it to 7 notes instead. See, there's a different idea generated every single time. You can spark ideas just like that. Now also we can actually reduce the pitch range as well. So at the moment we've got 1 full octave here that we can see. So what we can actually do is reduce it or increase it. So if you want to have more notes, so higher notes within there, for example, you can just increase the amount of notes. Basically, you can think of it as all the notes that are shown here are all the possibilities that can be generated. So you can actually decrease this. I might decrease this a little bit more. Let's do that to that and then randomize it again. And also we got these tie notes here as well. Tie notes basically takes any notes that are 2 together. So you can see there's 2 together here, which are actually playing as 16ths. So you got this kind of roll going on, this kind of, shuffle kind of going on. But what we can do is we can turn tie notes on, and that actually ties them both together. And what that basically means is it's just one long note there. You can also use the scroll on the right hand side here where you can choose where you want the notes. So say, for example, if you wanted them to be up an octave, you can do from here. You can just select it like that. So actually going to take it back down again as well. I think it was better when it was a bit lower. So as you can see, it's just so quick to kind of come up with ideas with this plugin. I absolutely love it. And it's not just one instrument that you could route it into. It could actually control multiple instruments, for example. Just like we set up the towel before for our bass line, you could also set up something to go over the top of it. So I'm actually going to duplicate this towel channel here. So we have another instance of towel, but it's obviously already set up with Riffer as well. So I could change the instrument if I wanted to, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe add some keys in over the top of this. Let's see if we can add maybe let's have a look at some keys. Let's go for a Rhodes preset and hear how it sounds. I'm actually going to put a chord on here as well. I'm going to use one of my own chords. Using the chord device. Love the chord device. Let's hear how that sounds. Now you could be in the position where maybe this is actually sounding a bit too high. I think it is sounding a bit too high. Maybe it needs to go down an octave. And what I can do is I can just jump into the MIDI effects within Ableton and just go to the pitch device here. I'm going to take it down by 12 semitones. Actually, maybe that doesn't sound good. I'm going to leave it as it was. And now I can just go ahead and use the random feature and it will actually affect both of them. And of course, you can actually get in and edit any of these notes that you want to. So say, for example, I want to get rid of this note here. Just click on it. You see it goes light grey, and I can actually put it here, for example. So as you can see, it's really good for coming up with melodies, bass lines, lead lines, but I started playing around with it some more, and actually you can use it on pretty much anything. In fact, it's really good on drums as well. So let's take a look at the drums that I've already got here for this loop. So I've got this kind of skippy drum pattern going on. And most of that skippiness is coming from this skippy hi-hat here. It's basically just a whole load of MIDI notes that I've created myself, and it's driving this hi-hat here that's in a simpler. But we can actually get Riffer to actually generate these hi-hats for us. Now I'm going to just deactivate this clip here, so it's not going to play these MIDI notes. And what we're going to do is instead get a Riffer. So I'm going to get a new instance of Riffer. And I'm going to get it to generate the notes for this hi-hat. So I'm going to set up the input of this hi-hat for Riffer. Again, I'm going to select Riffer from here and input. And that's now ready to receive. So let's go to this Riffer here. Now, because it is a simpler and it's just a hi-hat, the root note of a simpler is C3. And I don't actually want to play this as a melody. I don't want it to play any higher in pitch. So what I'm actually going to do is decrease the pitch range here, just so I've got one single note. So we've got C3 here, which is the root note of that simpler. And what I can do within here is I can just use this dice here to actually regenerate those skippy hi-hats. Sounds a bit horrible so far. Let's go to that density tab. I'm going to get rid of those. Don't want those. I'm going to lock that off. Velocity. I think I actually want to vary this velocity up a bit. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to adjust the velocity range. So this range is the range at which it randomizes. So it will do anything between 60% and 100%. So I can actually adjust this. I'm going to take this down maybe to say about 86% and then take this down to about 44. And then any kind of note, it will just randomize in between there. So you can see this, it will randomize it. Now the duration, yeah, I'll keep that random as well. See how that goes on. Maybe that might work. And then go back to the pitch tab. Now I don't want it on every single 16th, so I'm going to decrease this, maybe make it to 7. Let's see how that sounds. And of course I can use the shuffle as well to give it a bit of shuffle. And let's hear how that sounds with the rest of the beats. Maybe I want to adjust that velocity a bit. Maybe it's a bit too low. I'm going to try and take it up a little bit maybe. So it's giving us a nice little shuffle kind of pattern. However, I might not want that kind of shuffly, skippy hi-hat to play on the same as the offbeat hi-hat. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to delete these notes in here because I want to show you another feature within here that I really love. So let's delete these notes, and I can just do that by clicking on one of them and just dragging. That gets rid of them. Now the offbeat hi-hat is playing here, 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 and here. Now, these are the notes that I don't want Riffer to pick from. Now, I can actually disable these notes so it doesn't actually pick them. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to right click on here and it goes green. This means that it won't be selected. I'm going to get rid of that note and I'm going to deselect it, get rid of that note, deselect it, do the same with this as well. So now these notes here, it's not going to pick from. So if I hit random, nothing will be selected on those and it will give that open hi-hat some room. Take that velocity down as well. It sounds a bit too much, doesn't it? And maybe a few more. Let's try 9. So it works really well for generating single drum sounds like this using the simpler, but you can also use it with drum racks as well. So for example, I'm going to pick this Latin fusion drum kit, and this has got a whole load of kind of bongo-ish kind of sounds in it. And what I want to do is I want to create like a kind of almost a live percussion bongo loop, and I can do that quite easily using Riffler. Now let's have a listen to some of the sounds within here. Now, say I want to kind of create a 16th pattern with these 8 samples just randomly. I can do that quite easily with Riffler. Let's have a look and open up the chain. I'm going to open up the IO. I can see that it starts at C1. So the first bongo is at C1, C sharp 1, D1, etc. So I can actually, those are the kind of notes that I'm looking to generate from. So let's have a look at Riffler. And at the moment, it's just playing on C3. So I'm going to take that all the way down to C1. So that's now down on C1. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to increase the pitch range because I want it the first 8 notes basically. And I'm going to right click on these because I want those. I want to be able to select those. I'm going to keep those open. And let's try pressing random. And actually I've just realized that it's still mapped to that skippy hi-hat. I'm going to turn that skippy hi-hat off for now. And let's go to the ins of the drum kit. And let's go to Riffler, Riffer again, input, and now it should work. I don't like that one at the bottom so much, but what I can do is just simply move it up, get rid of that one. And maybe for something like this, maybe you want to adjust the velocity so there's a bit more velocity range. See how that sounds. And of course, if you're liking the notes here, you can simply lock them in and then you can start varying the velocity if you want to. It works really, really well. And there we go. In just a couple of minutes, we were able to generate a brand new Latin conga kind of loop. And in fact, you've got full control over this, so you can add more shuffle to it, for example. And let's try switching it out for a shakers kit, for example. Let's try increasing it to 16 steps. So as you can see, there's just so many different uses for this plugin, and I'm finding new ones every single day. In fact, the other day I started using it with Scaler 2, and that really adds a new dimension to it as well. So I've got 3 MIDI channels set up here. I've got Riffer set up, Scaler 2 and Tal Uno LX. Now the idea is I want Riffer to generate the notes, the MIDI notes. They're going to go into Scaler, and Scaler will take those notes and convert them into chords and send them to the Tal Uno LX. So let's get this set up. So the first thing I need to do is make sure that Scaler is receiving the notes from Riffer. So I'm going to select that as Riffer, and then from the second drop down Riffer and set that to in. And then on the Tal Uno LX, I want this to receive the notes from Scaler. So I'm going to select Scaler within here, and then set the in as well. I just want to make sure that Scaler is working okay. So let's open up Scaler. So that's definitely receiving the notes within there. Now let's get some chords within here. Let's build a basic kind of progression. Okay, so I'm going to use those 3 chords there. Now I can actually bind these to certain notes on the keyboard. So if I hit this toggle here, we can see we've actually bind those notes to C2, D2 and E2. So these are the notes that I need to play from Riffer. So let's go to Riffer. So first off within here, I need to make sure that I'm going to move it down the scale a bit, move it down the keyboard a bit. There you go. So we've got C2 in there. I want to make sure that it's only going to hit C2, D2, E2. So I'm going to decrease the pitch range just so that we have those notes on screen. Now, how do I make it miss the black keys? I want to make it miss the black keys. Well, that's quite simple, because if we select the C major chord, then it'll only play the white keys. So I've got C selected as my root note. I'm going to select major from the scale within here. And now what I can do is hit the dice button, and that will randomly generate those notes. Okay, that's way too many notes. Let's go to maybe 6 notes. Let's try 6 notes, and I'm going to take the root note off as well. And it's using that density again, so I'm going to get rid of the density. I don't like that. I'm going to lock that off. I'm going to keep the velocity the same velocity as well. Lock that off. Duration, same duration. Lock that off. Let's see how this sounds. Let's hear it with the beat. And of course you can change the notes over in Scaler whenever you want to, if you want to change out any of those notes. you can just keep tweaking those different parameters and different notes and everything else like that until you get what you want out of it. Now, what happens when you've kind of finished with that? You've got the notes within Riffer that you want. How do you then get that into Ableton? Well, it's really quite easy. So at some point, you're probably going to want to get these notes out of Riffer. Well, actually, it's really easy because it's already set up like that. If I just close this Riffer window, all I need to do is arm that towel channel because it's already receiving those MIDI notes and hit record. And there we go, we have our MIDI clip there ready to go. All I need to do is turn off on here, and I've now got this MIDI note and it will just keep using that now. And now you can go ahead and use this within this current track if you wanted to, or if you wanted to save this melody for later, you could easily just right click on it and select export MIDI clip. Now I've got a folder on my hard drive where I save all melodies that are kind of I have for later. So I could call this crazy cool melody, for example. Save that on my hard drive, and I've actually got a shortcut to my MIDI folder within here. And as you can see, that's now showing up within here. I can drag it, drop it on, and then use it a bit later for another project. Also, if you're going between different ideas in Riffer, you don't even have to go that far. You can go to the presets down here and you can actually save this one. For example, all the parameters here, I can save that as a preset just clicking on here. And if I want to randomize it and I select a different one, I can then save that as the second one, and then I can randomize it again, do it as the third one. And I can easily go back to the first, second or third whenever I want to. They're there whenever I want them. And if you want to edit these at all, you hit the pencil icon at the top right hand corner here. And we've got all the presets down here. You can rename them so you can come back to them at any point, or you can just delete them here and start afresh if you want to. Honestly, I just love this plugin. There's just so much you can do with it. It's just an idea generating machine, and you can hook it up to just about anything. Those are just a few ideas of kind of how I found to use it, and I'm finding new ones every single day. You pretty much hook it up to anything that accepts MIDI. So yeah, there's so much stuff you can do with it, and I absolutely love it. As I said, it's become one of my essential plugins now. I use it when I'm starting a remix or when I'm just starting a new idea. It just kind of sparks something, and sometimes when I've got a whole load of different elements within a mix, I've already got my drums, my bass, things like that, I'm looking for a melody line or something to go over the top of it. This is a great place to start because it kind of, you already have the key, you know what key you want, you just can't get the idea of the groove or the notes and stuff that you're trying to get out of your head, and this just generates it completely random. There's lots of different MIDI generators out there, like Scaler for example, but they're all based upon certain chords and progressions, whether this one is about being completely random, and sometimes coming up with those kind of random mistakes are actually just ingenious ideas. Sometimes they just work out really well, and the best things are often stuff you do by accident. So that's why I think Riffer works so well and works so well within my workflow. So yeah, I definitely recommend giving this a go, downloading it. It's a very reasonably priced plugin, and honestly I pay double because it's really helped me get out those ruts when I can't think of an idea. So yeah, there's a link in the description below if you want to check it out. I think it's on sale at the moment, so you might want to pick it up quite quickly. It is an amazing little plugin, and yeah, I definitely recommend trying it out. If this video has been useful to you, then definitely get subscribed to my channel. I've got loads more videos on different music production techniques, Ableton tutorials, Pioneer stuff. There's loads of stuff on my channel, so definitely get subscribed, hit that notification bell so you're notified the moment I upload a brand new video, and hopefully I'll see you again in the next one.